My earliest memories are filled with the sound of shouting. Dad's voice would boom through our small house, making the walls seem to shake. Mom would try to keep her voice down, probably thinking of me and my baby sister Lillian, but sometimes she couldn't help but shout back. I was 7 then, and Lillian was just too young to really understand what was happening. I remember watching Mom brush Lillian's hair one morning, singing softly to her. That was the last time I saw her do that. Later that day, the shouting started again, worse than ever before. "You're impossible, Robert," Mom's voice cracked. "You control everything I do, everyone I talk to." The divorce happened fast after that. One day Mom was just gone. Dad told us she'd left us, that she'd chosen alcohol and other men over her own daughters. I was old enough to feel confused and betrayed, but young enough to believe him completely. It wasn't long before Dad brought Sarah home. She was younger than Mom, always smiling, and she clearly adored Lillian. My baby sister took to her immediately, calling her mommy within weeks. But I couldn't do it. Every time Sarah tried to hug me, or do my hair the way Mom used to, I'd pull away. "Chloe," Dad would say sternly, "Sarah is trying her best. You need to be more grateful." But how could I be grateful? I still had a mom, a real one, somewhere out there. Where was she? Why didn't she call? Why didn't she fight to see us? These questions haunted me through my childhood, but I learned to keep them to myself. Sarah doted on Lillian, buying her pretty dresses and taking her to dance classes. I was invited too, but I always refused. I threw myself into books instead, spending hours in my room studying. It was easier than watching my sister build a relationship with my replacement mother. Years passed this way, with Lillian becoming more and more Sarah's daughter while I remained stubbornly on the outside. But I had a plan. I studied hard, knowing that education would be my ticket to freedom. While Lillian was being groomed to be the perfect daughter, I was plotting my escape through college applications and scholarship essays. Finally, at 18, I was free. College felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. My dorm room might have been tiny, but it was mine, no Sarah hovering, no dad dictating rules, no constant reminder of being the difficult daughter. I still came home during breaks, trying to maintain some connection with Lillian. During one of these visits, in my final year, I found her in her room, which looked like a princess's chamber, all pink and white, courtesy of Sarah's decorating obsession. "So, what are your plans after graduation?" I asked, settling into her window seat. "Have you thought about which colleges you might want to apply to?" Lillian was sprawled across her bed, perfectly manicured nails tapping away at her phone screen. "Oh, I'm not going to college," she said, as casually as if she were discussing the weather. "I'm getting married." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Married? You're not even 18 yet." "When did this happen?" "Sarah introduced me to Marcus last year." She finally looked up from her phone, her eyes sparkling. "His family owns that big real estate company downtown, you know, Preston Properties? They're loaded, Chloe. And he's absolutely perfect." "But what about your dreams? You used to talk about becoming a teacher," I reminded her, thinking of the little chalkboard she'd had as a kid. Lillian waved her hand dismissively. "That was just kid stuff. Sarah says I don't need college anyway. She believes a woman's real purpose is to create a family and have children. Why waste time with degrees when I can start my real life now?" I gripped my coffee mug tighter, fighting the urge to launch into a lecture about feminism and independence. "Just think carefully about what you really want, Lil. Not what Sarah wants, not what Marcus wants. What you want." "I know what I want," she rolled her eyes. "Not everyone needs to be a career woman like you." The way she said it, like being a career woman was some kind of character flaw, made my stomach twist. But I stayed quiet. After all, it was her life to live. After graduation, I found a nice apartment across town and started working as a remote accountant. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough and gave me the independence I craved. Meanwhile, Lillian married Marcus in a lavish ceremony that Sarah orchestrated down to the last crystal champagne flute. Within a year, my baby sister was a mother herself, with little James arriving right on schedule. A year later came Emma. That's when my peaceful life started unraveling. The first time Lillian showed up unannounced, she was wearing designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, carrying 2 baby bags and looking perfectly put together despite supposedly being an exhausted new mom. "I have a spa appointment," she announced, already setting the bags down in my living room. "You'll watch them, right?" "Thanks, sis. James just ate, and Emma might need a diaper change soon." "Oh, and James likes his stuffed elephant for nap time, it's in the blue bag somewhere." Before I could even process what was happening, she was gone, leaving me with a toddler and an infant. This became a regular occurrence. Lillian would appear with some urgent appointment, lunch date, or shopping trip, dropping the kids off like they were packages to be delivered. The real shock came when she and Marcus decided to take a romantic getaway. No warning, no asking, they just showed up at my door with the kids and enough supplies for 3 days. The constant interruptions were driving me insane. My work as an accountant required focus and attention to detail, something nearly impossible to maintain with 2 small children running around. Every time I'd settle into a spreadsheet, there'd be a cry, a crash, or "Auntie Chloe, I'm hungry." I tried working early mornings before Lillian's surprise visits, late nights after the kids went home, weekends when I should have been relaxing. But it wasn't enough. My boss had started noticing errors in my work, small mistakes that could have serious consequences. "Why don't you ask Sarah and Dad to watch them sometimes?" I suggested one day as Lillian dropped off the kids for the 3rd time that week. "Or maybe Marcus's parents?" "Dad's always at work," Lillian replied, already halfway out the door. "And Sarah says the noise gives her migraines. Besides, you're so good with them." I watched her walk away in her perfectly pressed designer outfit, not a hair out of place, and fought back the urge to scream. She couldn't handle them alone all day, but somehow I was supposed to handle them while working a full-time job? The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I had a crucial deadline, and James was particularly energetic that day. I'd turned away from my laptop for just a moment to stop Emma from eating a crayon when I heard the thud. James had been jumping on the couch, something I'd told him not to do countless times, and had fallen off. He seemed fine at first, but by the time Lillian came to pick them up, an angry purple bruise had spread across his shin. The moment she saw it, she exploded. "What the hell, Chloe," she screamed, making both kids start crying. "I trust you with my children, and this is how you watch them." He could have been seriously hurt. "Maybe if you actually watched your own kids," I started, but she cut me off. "I knew I shouldn't have left them with you. You're so irresponsible. What were you doing, too busy with your precious spreadsheets, to keep my son safe?" Something in me snapped. Years of resentment, of being taken for granted, of being expected to put my life on hold for everyone else's convenience, it all came pouring out. "Get out," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Take your kids and get out of my apartment." "Excuse me? I'm done being your free babysitter. I have a job, Lillian. A real job that pays my bills. I can't keep dropping everything because you need a spa day or lunch with your friends. Hire a professional babysitter." I practically pushed them into the hallway, ignoring Lillian's shocked expression and the kids' confused tears. The moment the door closed, my phone started ringing. "Dad. What the hell do you think you're doing?" he roared before I could even say hello. "Your sister is crying her eyes out. How dare you treat her this way? If she doesn't like how I watch her kids, she can watch them herself," I shot back. "You will apologize to your sister immediately. This kind of behavior is unacceptable." "Unacceptable? What's unacceptable is dumping your kids on someone without warning and then getting mad when they can't provide professional childcare while working full-time. Listen here, young lady," his voice dropped to that dangerous tone I remembered from childhood. "If you don't start showing more respect to your sister and treating your family better, you can forget about your inheritance." I'll leave everything to Lillian. After this threat, I knew I needed to handle things differently. The constant tension wasn't good for anyone, especially the kids. So I swallowed my pride and called Lillian. "Hey," I said when she answered, my voice carefully neutral. "Can we talk?" "I was going to call you actually," she replied, sounding surprisingly calm. "I might have overreacted a bit yesterday." We met for coffee at a neutral location, the small cafe halfway between our apartments. Lillian looked tired, the perfectly put-together facade slightly cracked. "Look," I started, stirring my latte. "I love James and Emma, you know I do. But I can't keep dropping everything at a moment's notice. I need to be able to plan my work schedule." Lillian nodded slowly. "I get it. I guess I'd been taking advantage a bit." We worked out a system. She'd give me at least 24 hours notice before bringing the kids over. No more doorstep drop-offs, no more surprise weekend stays. We'd stick to a regular schedule, Tuesday afternoons and Thursday mornings, when I could properly plan my workload around childcare. Things improved after that. The kids still came over, but on a predictable schedule that let me arrange my work accordingly. I even started enjoying our time together more, now that it wasn't forced on me. As Christmas approached, I made plans with my college friends for a ski trip in the mountains. It would be my first real vacation in ages, no work, no family drama, just snow and freedom. When I heard Lillian was planning a family trip to Europe, I figured it was perfect timing. Surely a family vacation meant the whole family, kids included. 2 days before my departure, I stopped by Lillian's house with Christmas presents for the kids. The living room was chaos, suitcases everywhere, clothes laid out on every surface. Dad and Sarah were there too, Sarah directing the packing like a general organizing troops. "These are so cute," Lillian exclaimed as the kids tore into their early presents. "They can play with them while staying at your place during Christmas." I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "What?" "Oh, it's going to be amazing," Lillian continued, apparently oblivious to my shock. "Marcus's college friends are joining us in Paris, and then we're hitting the ski slopes in Switzerland. No kids allowed, it'll be just like old times." "I'm leaving for a ski trip tonight," I said slowly. "With my friends. I've had these plans for months." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I watched my father's face turn that familiar shade of red that always preceded an explosion. "I couldn't care less about your plans," he spat, standing up from his armchair. "When are you going to grow up and realize that family comes first? Looking after your sister's children is your responsibility." "My responsibility?" I echoed, incredulous. "Since when is it my responsibility to be their full-time babysitter?" Sarah stepped forward, her face a mask of disapproval I'd grown all too familiar with over the years. "Chloe, you can't just put your selfish desires above family plans. What were you thinking, making vacation arrangements without consulting any of us? That's not how family works." I let out a harsh laugh. "Consulting you? That's rich. Did any of you consult me before planning your European vacation? Did anyone even think to ask if I was available to watch the kids?" "We shouldn't have to ask," Lillian chimed in, bouncing Emma on her hip. "You're their aunt. Then why don't you ask their grandmother?" I gestured toward Sarah. "She's family too, isn't she?" Sarah's perfectly maintained expression cracked slightly. "Don't be ridiculous. I can't possibly watch them, it's far too demanding at my age. Besides," she smoothed her designer blouse, "your father and I are going on the trip too." "Of course you are," I muttered. "So everyone gets a vacation except me?" "That's enough," Dad roared, making Emma start crying. "I've had it with your attitude, young lady. You've been difficult since you were a child, but this is the last straw. If you can't put family first, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of this family's future. The inheritance will go entirely to Lillian, every last penny." Something snapped inside me. Years of manipulation, of being the family doormat, of having my life treated as less important than everyone else's, It all came rushing to the surface. "You know what? Keep your damn inheritance," I shouted, grabbing my coat. "I'm done being threatened. I'm done being manipulated. You all can go straight to hell." The door slammed behind me with satisfying force. My hands were shaking as I drove home, but I felt lighter somehow, like I'd finally broken free of invisible chains. I threw myself into packing and left to meet my friends, turning off my phone as we headed toward the mountains. It wasn't until I was settled in our cozy cabin that evening that I thought to check the security camera feed I'd installed after one too many surprise visits from Lillian. They had been there, all of them, Dad pounding on my door, Sarah trying to peer through the peephole, Lillian bouncing a crying Emma while James sat on the floor playing with his toy cars. They had stayed for hours, alternating between pleading and threatening, clearly unable to process that I'd actually chosen myself over their demands for once. My phone buzzed constantly during the first day of vacation. I had muted all their notifications, but I could still see the numbers climbing: 27 missed calls from Dad, 43 from Lillian, 15 from Sarah. The voicemails and messages piled up, each more desperate than the last. "If you don't call back right now, young lady," Dad's voice thundered through one message I accidentally played before deleting. Sarah's texts were a masterclass in guilt-tripping. "I've never seen the children so upset. How could you abandon your own family at Christmas? Your poor sister is devastated. Is this really the kind of person you want to be?" Lillian's video messages were the worst, her perfectly made-up face streaked with tears, Emma crying in the background. "Please, Chloe. We can't find anyone else on such short notice. I'll pay you double what I usually do." I turned my phone off completely after that. My friends noticed my tension and suggested we hit the slopes early. The bite of cold air and the rush of skiing helped clear my head. 3 days into our trip, my cousin Rachel texted, "Just heard what happened. Don't worry too much, Sarah finally found someone through her country club friends to watch the kids. Some retired teacher or something. She's charging them a fortune though. Guess professional childcare isn't so cheap after all." I couldn't help but smile at that. They'd finally had to face the reality of what their constant demands had been costing me. When I returned home a week later, my social media notifications were exploding. Dad had made a public post, complete with old family photos of him with Lillian and me as children. It pains me to write this, but today I officially disown my eldest daughter, Chloe. She has betrayed not only me but our entire family, abandoning her sister and young niece and nephew at Christmas to pursue her own selfish desires. A true daughter would never put her own wishes above her family's needs. From this day forward, all my property and assets will go to my younger daughter Lillian, who understands the true meaning of family loyalty. Chloe is no longer welcome in our home or our lives. The post had hundreds of reactions, mostly from Dad's business associates and church friends offering sympathy and condemning my selfishness. Sarah had shared it with additional commentary about ungrateful children and modern values destroying family bonds. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then closed the app without liking, commenting, or sharing. Let them have their public meltdown. I had work to do, and for the first time in years, a quiet apartment all to myself. A week after Dad's dramatic social media announcement, I received a message that made my heart stop. The notification simply read, "Catherine Mitchell wants to connect with you." My mother's name appearing on my screen like a ghost from the past. Her message was long, carefully worded. "Chloe, I saw your father's post. I know it's been many years, and I have so much to explain. Would you be willing to meet with me? I understand if you don't want to, but please know that I've never stopped thinking about you and Lillian." My hand shook as I read the rest. She'd been following our lives through social media all these years, my college graduation, Lillian's wedding, the birth of my niece and nephew. She'd been there, watching from a distance, unable to reach out. I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe across town. Walking in, I spotted her immediately. She looked older than in my memories, of course, but her eyes were the same. When she hugged me, I caught the faintest whiff of the lavender perfume she used to wear when I was little. I'm so sorry, Chloe, she said as we sat down. I know an apology can't make up for all these years, but you need to know the truth. The story she told made me feel sick. Dad had been systematically keeping her away from us, all while painting himself as the victim. He'd send her photos and videos of us with Sarah, birthday parties, school events, family vacations, along with messages about how happy we were with our real mother. Look how well they're doing, he'd write. Sarah is such a wonderful mother to them. They don't even remember you anymore. Why would you want to disrupt their lives now? She pulled out her phone, showing me years of messages from Dad, each one more manipulative than the last. The girls call Sarah Mom now. It would only confuse them if you tried to come back into their lives. Chloe's doing so well in school. Sarah helps her with all her homework. She's forgotten all about you. Lillian asked why she doesn't look like her mommy Sarah. We told her she takes after her daddy. She's so happy with that answer. Don't ruin it for her. But the biggest revelation was about money. Mom had been sending substantial alimony payments all these years, thanks to her successful career as a corporate lawyer and her marriage to a wealthy businessman. Your father and I had an agreement, she said, stirring her untouched coffee. All the alimony I paid for you was supposed to be given to you when you turned 18. It was enough to buy you a small apartment, give you a start in life. He promised me he'd tell you about it. I thought about all the times Dad had dangled his inheritance over my head, using it to control me. All those years, he'd been threatening to withhold money that wasn't even his to begin with, money that had come from the mother he'd told me had abandoned us. That night, I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I started typing. In response to my father's recent post about disowning me, I feel compelled to share some truths that have recently come to light. For years, I believed what my father told me about my mother, that she abandoned us, that she didn't want us, that she chose alcohol and other men over her daughters. I believed him when he said we were better off without her. Today, I learned that every word was a lie. My mother never abandoned us. She was pushed away by a man who used manipulation and lies to maintain control over his daughters. While he painted himself as our savior, he was secretly receiving substantial alimony payments from our mother, money that was meant to be given to me when I turned 18. Instead, he held this money over my head for years, threatening to withhold his inheritance if I didn't comply with his demands. He sent our mother photos and videos of us with our stepmother, telling her we were happier without her, that we'd forgotten her, that we called another woman mom. He convinced her that reaching out would harm us psychologically. All while she watched us grow up from a distance, sending money she thought would secure my future. To my father, keep your money. I don't want an inheritance built on lies. I don't want anything from a man who could so cruelly separate children from their mother for his own benefit. To those who commented on his post about family loyalty, you don't know the whole story. You never did. The responses came flooding in immediately. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years expressed their shock and disgust. Old family friends reached out with stories of their own about Dad's controlling behavior. Several of Dad's business associates quietly unfriended him. Dad's message came late that night, Chloe, you've misunderstood everything. I was only trying to protect you girls. If you'll let me explain. I blocked him without reading the rest. Sarah tried calling next, then Lillian. I blocked them too. It hurt to cut off my sister, but watching her turn into a mirror image of our father hurt more. Her sense of entitlement, her manipulation, her absolute certainty that she was always right, she'd learned well from him. Mom helped me find an apartment in her neighborhood, insisting on buying it outright. Now, 6 months later, we have dinner together 3 times a week. She tells me stories about my early childhood, fills in the blank spaces in my memory. Sometimes we look through her old photos, ones I'd never seen before, of her holding me as a baby, teaching me to walk, reading to me and Lillian. Do you think you'll ever speak to Lillian again? Mom asked me recently. I thought about my sister, about how thoroughly Dad had shaped her into his image. Maybe someday, I said. If she ever learns to think for herself. but I'm not holding my breath. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding my relationship with my mother, making up for all those lost years. I'm learning that family isn't about obligation or control or threats. It's about love, respect, and truth, qualities I never found in my father's house, but discover every day with my mom. Sometimes I still get messages from flying monkeys, Dad's friends, church members, distant relatives who think I should forgive and forget. I delete them all. I've spent enough years living under the weight of other people's expectations. I'm finally free.
My name is Sandra Holmes. I am 40 years old and I have no kids from my second marriage. My husband is a kind man who never misses our monthly dates. No matter how busy he is, he always keeps his promises. I know I shouldn't compare him to my first husband, but I have never regretted my divorce, nor have I regretted getting remarried. And this month is our 8th wedding anniversary. My husband had reserved a table at a fancy restaurant with a view of the sea. I thought we were going to have a wonderful time. But then I ran into the last person I wanted to see. It was Jim Stone, my ex-husband from 10 years ago. We were about to leave the restaurant after finishing our meal, when my husband excused himself to go to the restroom. I was admiring the ocean view from the window. What a beautiful view. As I gazed at the sea, I reminisced about the times my husband and I had spent looking at the ocean together. Just then, I heard someone call my name. And when I turned around, "Hey, what's so beautiful? Do you think a regular ocean appears nice to someone like you who's pretty much broke?" Jim. "Hey, long time no see. Why are you... Why?" "I'm the one who should be asking you why." Jim sat down in the chair my husband had been using, looking at me as if I was a joke. "Yes, those eyes. I put up with those eyes for a whole decade of our marriage. I never thought I'd run into you here. Can someone like you, who doesn't have much money, really eat at a fancy place like this? Can you even afford it? Or are you here for a once-in-a-lifetime thing? It's our wedding anniversary." "Ah. I see. Poor people can only come to places like this on anniversaries, huh? I come here often, you know." "You're still pathetic. Isn't there someone with you?" "Yeah, there is. I just sent her to pay. You know, handling money is a woman's job." I thought he was still the same, always belittling women. "Ah, she's back. Just wait there." The woman who came back was his lover from 10 years ago. She has aged quite a bit, her beauty half what it used to be, and she looks worn out from life. I guess Jim has been living it up while his wife suffers. "You're still wearing shabby clothes, aren't you? Aren't you embarrassed to dress so poorly? Talking to such a terrible man like him makes me feel sick." I turned my gaze toward the restroom, hoping my husband would return soon, and there he was. He had been watching us for a while, as I was talking to another man. Seeing the confusion on my face, he approached us. "Excuse me, do you need something from my wife?" "Your wife? This woman is your wife?" "Yes." "What do you need? You also look poor." "I guess poor women always remarry poor men." "Please don't be rude. My husband is a very respectable man." Jim snorted in disapproval at my response. "Humph. You must be just a useless, broke man." Then he glared at my husband. I thought, this man really hasn't changed at all. Jim was very selfish. Although he worked for a major corporation, it was unclear if he was competent. He was good at sucking up to his boss, though. He blamed his mistakes on his juniors and loudly claimed their achievements were due to his guidance. How he managed to climb the corporate ladder is beyond me. But by the time we divorced, he had become a manager. Jim claimed he was an elite employee, but I never thought of him as elite. I graduated from a prestigious university. That's what Jim would always brag about. Not just any university, but a very different kind from the ordinary ones. When I was only dating him, I believed his exaggerated stories and thought he was really smart. But when we got married, I discovered that was his only real talent. Plus, he consistently degraded me, even though I only completed high school. Your parents were too poor to send you to university, right? But it's good for you. You didn't have the brains for it anyway. If your family had been rich, you would have had to go to university. But it would have been impossible for someone as stupid as you. My family wasn't poor. I just wanted to start working sooner rather than going to college. Enough with the excuses. You can't handle not making excuses, right? You're an incompetent woman, after all. It's good for women, isn't it? Even if they're incompetent or stupid, as long as they have good looks, they can get by. If they catch a competent man, they can live well. I never imagined he would say such things before we married. So his transformation after marriage shocked me. Moreover, his parents weren't wealthy landowners. His father was just a director. Yet he ruthlessly looked down on anyone he considered poor. You really can't do anything right. You're bad at cooking, you can't clean, and you can't even have kids. Marrying you was a huge mistake. It wasn't a physical issue that prevented me from having kids, it was the stress caused by Jim. My family has always valued frugality and cherishing what we have. But when I cooked with radish leaves to save money, he yelled, "Are you trying to feed me trash?" and threw them in the trash. It made me realize how different we fundamentally were. One day, he told me he had a lover. The woman was much younger than he was. He pushed for a divorce, saying it was better for him to remarry a younger woman. I was happy to divorce such a man. I signed the divorce papers. Who is this man, Sandra? He's my ex-husband, Jim Stone. Oh, I see. Of course, I had told my husband about everything Jim had said and done to me. It had been a painful 10 years, and I had shared it all with tears. Then, without saying anything, my husband just listened and finally said, "Let's be happy from now on." You really dared to marry such a woman like her? Since you're marrying a woman from a poor family, you must be a broke guy too. Well, maybe. Maybe not. Of course, you are. So, you're also a broke man, huh? What? Marrying a poor person means you're broke too, am I right? But, why did you divorce such a wonderful person? Wonderful? Your eyes must be fooling you. Truly wonderful means having a beautiful wife like mine. He indicated his wife as he pointed at her, who stood there looking embarrassed. Is that woman your wife? Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she? She's actually my boss's daughter. Marrying the boss's daughter definitely helps one climb the career ladder faster. Marrying a broke woman like you probably means you're just a regular employee. Too bad. A regular employee? I haven't heard that word in years. What are you trying to prove? Bottom-tier guy marrying a bottom-tier woman. It just means you'll both be broke for the rest of your lives. And you think you deserve to eat in such a fancy restaurant like this? Well, this level of restaurant isn't a problem for us. Yeah, sure, if that's what you think. Just then, a waiter passed by. And my husband pulled out a black card, instructing him to settle the bill. Jim, surprised by the black card, tried not to show it but snorted again. Is that a black card? Showing off a card like that here, you're not used to it. Not used to it? You must have borrowed it from someone. Showing off by flashing the card. But later you'll have to pay back the person who lent you that card, right? I can imagine you're scared to splash the cash in such a place. It's all part of your act. Ha! Funny thing to say. Who would lend their card, I wonder? No matter how naive someone is, they wouldn't lend their card. How would you know that? Jim, you shouldn't say such insulting things. What's insulting? I'm just stating the truth. There's no way you could be wealthy if you married a poor woman like her. My wife is poor, you say? Yes, that's right. Her folks' place is a rundown one-floor home. You know that, right? Or maybe you were too embarrassed to visit her home. So you went to a family restaurant instead? Meeting her parents at a family restaurant for a marriage proposal is unheard of. But for poor people like you, it's probably the norm. Family restaurant, huh? The fact that you thought of that means you must have done your greeting there, right? If you hadn't experienced it yourself, you wouldn't have thought of it. What are you talking about? I'm not short on money. I wouldn't do such a miserable thing. Yet you came up with it. I never would have thought of that. Right, Sandra? What about you? Well, I think I'd like to go to a family restaurant occasionally, but we rarely get the chance. Exactly. What? You're lying. When you were with me, you were happy to go to family restaurants. That's because I had never really been to one before. Oh, I bet. You sure talk big. Coming to such a fancy restaurant just makes you want to act all important. Maybe that's you? It seems like you don't fit in this kind of place. What? You seem out of place, don't you think? There's no way I'm out of place. You're the one who doesn't fit in here. Do you even know who I am? Why would I know you? If you want me to remember you, just become famous. I am well known, though. Well, it's impossible for a regular employee like you to know me, I guess. What? I'm a manager, not a regular employee. Manager? Yes, how about that? Impressive, isn't it? At that moment, the chauffeur arrived, greeted politely, and informed my husband. Sir, your car is ready. Thank you. Huh, what's going on? Oh well, you're probably just the president of some small company. I work for a major corporation, the Holmes Group, and I'm a manager there. Oh, you're still just a manager? Excuse me. You consider yourself top tier. But staying as a manager at your age won't bring any advancement. What, this man works at our company? Yes, he's been with our company for a long time. What do you mean our company? You talk big, but you're just an office lady from a small company. That's right, I don't have kids or any reason to quit my job. But. So, you can't have kids? I was right, you can't have kids. Something's wrong with you. Hey, there's a line to how rude you can be. Sandra is perfectly fine. If she's fine, why can't she get pregnant? Women are supposed to have kids. I don't need to explain that to you. You can't say it because it would prove there's something wrong with her. This man is hopeless. Yes, so bad it's beyond saving. This man's name is Jim Stone. Yes, I understand. He's fired. Sandra, please contact HR. Okay. What? What are you saying? Trying to shock me with that? What company's president are you, thinking you can fool me with such an obvious act? Are you stupid? Jim, my husband is the president of the Holmes Group. What? That can't be. However, the driver, with a look of pity, nodded as he looked at Jim. What, seriously? Is he really our president? Yes, and I am his wife and the vice president of our company. What? That's ridiculous. How could Sandra from a poor family end up as vice president? With just a high school diploma? Such things don't matter. Whether someone graduated from high school or college doesn't determine their worth. That's ridiculous. I will never forgive anyone who insults my wife. No, there's a union, yes, there is a union. The union will protect us employees. You're a manager, right? Managers are not union members. So, you are not protected by the union. Didn't you know that? Seriously. Well, you better brace yourself. Since you insulted my wife, you must face the consequences. Oh no. Jim had a stunned look on his face, but my husband didn't care and asked me if we should go. Then, we left the table. That night, perhaps bothered by the afternoon's events, Jim called. His attitude was completely different from his arrogance earlier. Sandra, it's been a while. What do you mean? We already had a talk this afternoon, Jim. Yes. What can I do for you? Your dismissal hasn't been issued yet. You guys were just joking, right? Huh? What do you mean? About you being the vice president and your husband being the president. No, they're all true. I'm surprised you don't know who your own company's president and vice president are. Why would you be the vice president, though? Because the best way I can help my husband is from the vice president's position. No. But it's strange. Why would a high school graduate be the vice president? It's not strange at all. I only graduated high school because I wanted to start working early. But after we separated, I acquired a college degree. Huh, really? Yes, there are schools you can do from home. So, you really are the president's wife? Yes. How did you manage to marry the president? When did you get married? We got married after I divorced you. I met the president soon after, and we dated for about 2 years before getting married. Why would the president take an interest in someone like you? Stop being so rude. Oh, sorry. Connections are mysterious, aren't they? I just happened to meet the president. Even so, why would he marry someone broke like you? Is he a philanthropist? No one marries for charity. If he's not a philanthropist, did he marry you to make you his slave? It's odd otherwise. Maybe today you got lucky to be taken to a fancy restaurant. But usually, you must be having plain, poor meals, right? And living a difficult life where you can't even buy what you like, am I right? Why would you think that? That's not true at all. You're the only one who would do such a thing. There's no way you could marry such a rich man. Why do you think so? Rich people have connections with politicians and other wealthy people. If a poorly raised woman like you shows up at their parties, it would embarrass the president. Or maybe he lets his mistress attend those instead. You're making wild assumptions. If you keep looking down on me like this, you'll truly regret it. I'm just concerned for you. A woman with a poor upbringing like you marrying a rich man like the president will only suffer. A regular employee's husband would suit you better. Marrying someone richer than me. You must be a foolish woman who can't see ahead. Who's the fool here? If you called just to say that, I'm hanging up. No, wait. I'm not trying to look down on you. It's just true that you come from poverty that can't be helped. Thinking I'm looking down on you for that is completely wrong. You say I come from a poor family, but my father is wealthy. Your family is poorer than mine. I didn't say it back then because of your pride. Your family home isn't even half the size of mine. Your father is just a department head, and you're still just a manager. That's not true. When I proposed to you, you were living in a small single-story house. That was because we were renovating our home then. We had stored all our belongings elsewhere. It was just a temporary residence, no need to move to a big house, my mother said. That can't be true. You don't have to believe it, but since the renovation is finished. Even if you say you want to visit my parents at home, you've stubbornly refused to go again. I couldn't tell you the truth. Who would visit such a poor, run-down house? You really are hopeless. Then, I'll send you a picture. This is my family home. You'll see from the picture. The photo I sent was of a large mansion. That's my house. I lived there for a while after our divorce. What? That can't be true. It's true. If this is true, then why were you working as an office lady in a small company? If you're so rich, you wouldn't need to work. And if you did work, wouldn't it be at a large corporation? Indeed, my father is the president of a major company. That company was a new one he started. When it was time to decide who would be the president, it was decided that my brother would take the role. So, I volunteered to handle the administrative work. Now, that company has advanced to the top of the industry. Is that true? Were you really so rich? Yes, this is the truth. This is the real me that you used to look down on. So, that's why you could marry the president? That's not it. I met the president because we shared the same hobbies. We met through our hobbies and hit it off. He didn't know I was the daughter of a wealthy family. And I didn't know he was the president. So, you are at the company where I work because of that? How long have you been at that company? I joined the company right after our divorce. I had a connection by chance. Why? When you were with me, you were a clerk at your brother's company. And after we divorced, you changed jobs? That's right. My brother's company has grown so much. And he told me it was time to do what I love. So I thought I might as well pursue what I've always wanted to do. Then, just as a senior position became vacant, they headhunted me. But at that stage, I still had no acquaintance with the president. He was still someone high above. I don't understand. How can you have connections like that? So, rich people just connect with other rich people? That's why I'm saying those things don't matter. Why do you think like that? It's because of that mindset that you're still just a manager. I wonder why your wife hasn't gotten tired of you yet. She can't get tired of me. I'm supporting her. Keep it up with that attitude, and you'll get what's coming to you. Anyway, that's the situation, so stop belittling me already. I wasn't trying to belittle you. I really thought you were poor. About that dismissal you mentioned this afternoon. Oh, yes, your dismissal. After all the mocking you did, it's only natural you'd be dismissed. That would make me in a tough spot. Can you talk to the president so I don't get fired? What? You were just mocking me tremendously, and yet you ask not to be dismissed? That's impossible, you know. I have nothing but resentment towards you. Why? The fact that you don't think you're resented is truly astonishing. What have I done to you? There's too much to even remember, it's that much. I bet your wife thinks the same as me. Why don't you ask her what she really thinks? Though I doubt she'll tell you. I only said those things because I thought you were poor. Why do you think I'm mocking you when I'm just being honest? Once words are spoken, they can't be taken back, you know? You should understand that as an adult. I do understand that. Then you should understand why you're being dismissed, right? No, I don't understand at all. Please, I'll be in trouble if I'm dismissed. If it were just about this afternoon, the president might have overlooked it. But then you had to call and ask why this and why that. My husband is here now, frowning. He really thinks you're hopeless. Maybe you should just give up, there's no saving you. No. If the president is right there, why can't you just say so? It's only natural for a husband and wife to be together. Besides, you didn't ask if someone was with me, did you? That's true, but you've poured gasoline on your own fire. You mocked not just me, but my parents and my husband too. Look, I didn't think you'd get this angry. Please forgive me. If I had known you were a wealthy lady, I wouldn't have said such mocking things. I won't say them again, please forgive me. Just give up. I think your dismissal order will come down tomorrow. Wait, please. Jim's voice echoed on the other end of the phone, but I hung up and looked at my husband. The next day, Jim came to the president's office. His face was all white, with dark circles under his eyes. And he seemed to be in a really bad condition. I was in a meeting with my husband, the president, about business matters. But I was startled by Jim's appearance. Jim, what's wrong? I'm very sorry. Jim apologized as he sat down on the spot. Jim, what are you doing? Please, just don't fire me. What do you mean? Of course, the president knew about yesterday's conversation. He had guessed from my responses during the call. And I had detailed Jim's remarks after hanging up. Therefore, his impression of Jim was very poor, and his anger was greater than mine. I am truly sorry again. I didn't know your wife was from a wealthy family. I think she is a perfect match for the president's wife. I also heard she graduated from university, even if it was through correspondence. She's a hard worker, a far cry from my own wife. So you decided on her as your wife, and then you got rid of her, right? What? Jim looked up at the president, wondering how he knew such a thing. Of course, I've told my husband everything. We're married, after all. Or do you and your wife not talk about your pasts? No, it's not like that, but that was a long time ago. I was young then. I thought Sandra was just a poor man's daughter. So I thought it was okay to have a mistress. How does it come to that? Is that why you think it's okay to commit sexual harassment or power harassment? What do you mean? Don't tell me you haven't done it? There are complaints from your female coworkers. They say if our company doesn't handle it, they'll go to the police. Our company was just discussing what to do about it. When your disrespectful remarks came yesterday. It's really hopeless, isn't it? That's right. I wouldn't have thought you were actually harassing or bullying. But watching you yesterday, it seemed all too true. You don't even regard women as people, do you? You think they're below you. No, I never, even if that were true, firing me would be too harsh. Please, show some mercy. Well, indeed, you have a family. If you were fired, you wouldn't be the only one in trouble. That's right. Exactly. My husband smirked and looked at me. So, what do you think, Sandra? How about sending Jim to our Ohio branch? Wait, what? The Ohio branch is in a region with very few people, practically unsustainable as a company. The former president, who came from that town, established the branch there to help the local people. But it's a lonely place with just one employee. The previous employee reportedly went mad from the loneliness. We want you to turn that branch around in 3 years. If you can do that, we'll bring you back here. Of course, if you can't, you'll spend your retirement in Ohio. Thank you. I appreciate it. Under the guise of the president's mercy, Jim set off for the Ohio branch. But both myself and my husband knew it was an impossible task. Having to work tirelessly alone for the small number of town residents. It was obvious that there wouldn't be any profit to be made. Unaware of this, Jim moved to the branch all motivated. His transfer was with his mistress who had been his wife. But surely she wouldn't be satisfied with just the cold and nothing else there. And eventually, she reached her limit. His salary plummeted, and despite being the branch manager in name, his pay was minimal, leading his wife to start yelling. This resulted in daily arguments. And although he boasted that if he turned things around in 3 years, he could return to the head office, his city-bred wife couldn't believe his words. She left the divorce papers and went back to the city. Jim tried his best for a year, but no matter how hard he worked, the population wouldn't increase and no profits would come. Eventually, he realized that no amount of effort here would change anything. And one day submitted his resignation. After leaving the company on his own terms, Jim contacted his wife, but by then, she had found someone new. Jim was not only ignored by her but was beaten up by her new man. And ended up in the hospital. After being discharged, Jim looked for a job, but at his age, he found nothing. And life became harder for him. He lived in a shabby, run-down apartment. And the only job he could find was as a nighttime store clerk. The man who had once boasted of graduating from a prestigious university now stood alone in a store at night. As for me, I continued to be protected by my kind husband. Enjoying another wonderful date this month. Marrying him changed my life so much, I'm grateful that Jim and I divorced.
Patty, I've always been telling you, haven't I? I wanted a son to carry on our family name, yet you gave birth to a girl. I don't need someone who's useless like you. Sign the divorce papers and get out of the house with your daughter.
One day, out of the blue, this was what Tony blurted out at my in-laws' house. In his right hand was the divorce paper, and he was holding his mistress on his left side. As I was dumbfounded by his unbelievable claim, his mistress added seriously, "Hello, I'm Kristen. I'm carrying Tony's baby, and of course, the baby's a boy. We've already confirmed the gender with tests, so I'll be the one to make Tony happy. Please, don't interfere with us anymore. Got it?" It was as if I was being painted as the villain. Then my mother-in-law Laura delivered the final blow. "I was completely deceived by you, Patty. I feel sorry for Tony, so never show your face to us again." There was not a single reasonable person around here. I couldn't understand how they could say such heartless words like that. While glancing at the entrance, I was utterly shocked, but I wasn't surprised or panicked about the situation. "What are you all even talking about?" "I have been single for a week now. I'm no longer your wife, Tony, so do as you please. Sarah and I will leave."
Patty, have you lost your mind? When do we get divorced? The divorce is supposed to happen right now.
"You're the one who lost your mind, Dad. We've already moved to a new house, so bye.
What are you talking about, Sarah? You guys are really stupid.
My husband laughed loudly enough for it to be heard outside as he pointed at us. He may be laughing now, but that won't last long. He has no clue on what's about to happen. I will never forgive my husband. He will surely regret hurting our daughter. As my husband continued to laugh, I calmly began to speak. The stupid one here is you, Tony. I already filed the divorce papers. You just had no clue about it.
Being pushed to the edge really does make people do unexpected things, huh? I never thought you would espouse such nonsense, but I guess this is your true nature. I feel way better knowing I'm divorcing a liar like you.
My husband, along with Laura and Kristen, looked down on me with contempt. Really, why did I ever approve of such a foolish daughter-in-law like you? I really want to punch my past self. I wasted my precious son's time. The biggest sin of my life. The only comfort is that you're about to be discarded right now. So just get out, loser. Oh, Laura, you and Tony are too kind. How could you just listen to her? I definitely made the right choice in choosing Tony. He's such a compassionate man. Patty, stop lying and let Tony go. It's for your own good. Their smirks were exactly like those evil witches in fairy tales. The heart is revealed through actions, and the ability to upset people with just a laugh is, in a way, a talent. But where there is evil, there is also justice. From now on, I will be the one to judge this evil. They will all regret what they've done. I displayed a video on my smartphone and confronted the three. Do you recognize this?
A video. No. Footage from a camera? What about it?
Oh, isn't this Tony's room? Why do you have footage of Tony's room on your smartphone? Do they really not understand anything? For people who call others stupid, their brains don't seem to be very sharp. That's exactly why they engage in immoral acts like infidelity so easily and even condone it. At the moment, it all made sense to me. I decided to reveal the truth to the three of them. This is footage from a hidden camera. I have been secretly monitoring you, Tony. I installed a camera in your room. So with that, I found out about your mistress and the pre-filled divorce papers.
What? You installed a hidden camera in my room?
That's why I secretly took out the divorce papers while you were away and submitted them. If you think I'm lying, why don't you go check it? There's nothing left in that drawer. Tony returned from his room half in disbelief, but when he came back, his face was pale. He seemed to have recognized the truth of my words. Laura and Kristen also lost their smiles when they saw his state. I can't believe it. She already knew.
Well, I'm surprised, but this is convenient, isn't it? It saved me the trouble of submitting them. Kristen, let's remarry right now. Nothing can stop us now.
That's right. When you think about it, there's nothing bad about this. It just sped up the process of getting rid of a useless daughter-in-law like her. This woman couldn't get pregnant with a son anyway. She was never right for my precious Tony. This is a chance for Tony to restart his life. Laura laughed loudly. As a mother myself, I understand the feelings of a parent who loves their child, but even then, the love she has for her son seems a bit too much. Certainly, my husband had taken over the family business after his father passed away, and he probably earned more than the average person. I knew he had worked hard. After all, we were married. But no matter how adorable a parent finds their outstanding child, it doesn't justify mistreating their spouse. The harsh words thrown at me by Laura from the time we were married are a bitter memory I wish I could forget. It has been truly difficult. My only ally is my daughter, Sarah. She has even been ignored and mistreated by them. I can never forgive them. Only I can protect my daughter. I will make them pay for how they treated us. I pulled out a small piece of paper from the drawer and presented it to the three. Tony and his mother looked at the paper with puzzled expressions.
What is this scrap of paper? A business card?
Hanson Corporation's CEO, Robert Gale? Isn't Hanson Corporation a major client of your company, Tony?
Yeah. Why do you have the business card of the CEO of such a big company? You shouldn't have any chance to interact with a CEO like him.
The two of them spoke as they pleased. Do they think I'm some kind of punching bag? Unfortunately, I'm human and sharp words do hurt. But they seem unaware of this. While that was happening, Kristen looked pale. Noticing her turning pale, Tony spoke up.
Kristen, what's wrong? You look pale.
Of course she would. Wouldn't you be shocked if someone suddenly pulled out your own father's business card?
Huh? Father? What are you talking about?
Seeing my husband's visibly confused expression, I couldn't help but smile. He really knew nothing. Seizing the moment, I raised my voice and stated clearly, Your mistress is the daughter of your client's CEO.
What? No way. Such a perfect coincidence like that can't be true. You must have gone crazy.
I always thought you were a worthless daughter-in-law, but now you're just a jerk trying to frame people. I wonder what kind of upbringing produces such a worthless person like you. I'd really like to ask your parents about this. I was infuriated by what Laura said, which not only insulted me, but my parents as well. She really insults people as easily as breathing. My daughter puffed up her cheeks in indignation as well. Seeing her like that relaxed me a bit. Emboldened by the comments of Tony and his mother, Kristen confronted me with a defiant expression. I agree with Tony and Laura. I don't care if he's the CEO of a big company or whatever. I've never met or heard of such a person. Don't make up someone's family out of nowhere, you jerk.
Exactly. I have met Mr. Gale because of my position, but he looked nothing like Kristen. Though I admit judging Kristen as a CEO's daughter makes sense, since she is elegant and intelligent. She's totally on a different level than you.
Right. She must have been raised by wonderful parents unlike you. That also means Sarah's future is predictable, even though she's Tony's daughter with a mother like you. Laura glaringly sent a contemptuous look towards my daughter. Not to be outdone, my daughter glared back fiercely. Enraged, I slammed the papers I had prepared hard onto the table.
What now? Robert Gale? Christian Gale? Adopted?
This is Mr. Gale's family registry. It proves the identities of Mr. Gale, his wife, and their unmarried child. As written here, Kristen is Mr. Gale's adopted daughter, which is why she doesn't resemble him.
What? Why do you have Mr. Gale's family registry?
Because Mr. Gale and I have a cooperative relationship. After I learned of your affair, I tried to reach out to him. Mr. Gale kindly entrusted me with this family registry. Tony then raised his voice.
What a joke. He's the CEO of a big company. You can't just meet him that easily. That family registry must be fake.
Now you've even resorted to faking documents. What a hopeless woman. Did you think we were so dumb as to be deceived by fake documents like this? You're gravely mistaken. Don't lump us in with someone as dumb as you. The stupid ones here are you guys. Faking official documents is a crime called forgery of official documents, punishable by 1 to 10 years in prison. I wouldn't commit such a crime just for this. If I got arrested, Sarah would suffer.
Then why are these documents here? You must have prepared these to confuse us.
He seemed desperate to deny any relationship between Mr. Gale and Kristen. Clearly, the idea of his mistress being the daughter of a client's CEO was unthinkable. People tend to shut out information that's inconvenient to them. But that's fine. Whether they face it or not, they're doomed for life. If you think they're fake, that's fine. I'm just letting you know the facts. My firm stance began to change my husband and Laura's attitude. Their smiles vanished and they began to tremble. Tony turned back to Kristen.
Kristen, just to make sure, tell me. You weren't deceiving me, right?
Kristen shook her head vigorously. That's impossible. Why would I lie to the person I love? Mr. Gale is a stranger to me. I had a child with you because I love you. I would never lie about this. I couldn't help but give a grand round of applause to Kristen's response. Well done, Kristen. You've shown your unwavering will. You truly love Tony, don't you? I'm moved. So I have a reward for you. Just wait a moment. I hurried out of the living room with puzzled looks stabbing my back. Giving no care to that, I stepped outside and quickly returned with the reward. Sorry for the wait. Here's your reward. What? No way! Kristen's eyes widened in shock as she backed away. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Gale had been waiting outside all along. Furthermore, the door was intentionally left ajar. When Tony presented me with the divorce papers today, I glanced at the entrance with dismay, aware of Mr. Gale's presence. Tony straightened up immediately and greeted as soon as he saw Mr. Gale.
Oh, Mr. Gale, it's been a while. Don't worry about formalities. They mean nothing to me.
Mr. Gale returned Tony's greeting with a cold gaze. A deep wrinkle formed between his eyebrows and his veins popped out.
I've been waiting outside the door, and oh, what an interesting conversation I've heard. Tony, I've come to understand your true nature very well. It's been an enlightening experience. To think that there are people who speak such foul words in this world. Don't you think so? Well, you see...
Knowing that Mr. Gale had heard everything, Tony seemed unable to come up with any excuses. He just stood there, dripping with cold sweat and looking down. Mr. Gale also glanced at Kristen, whose shoulders jolted up. Don't you two feel ashamed of what you've done? There are things one shouldn't do as a human. Marriage and love are different. Once you've sworn eternal love, you must at least fulfill the basic responsibilities. Apologize to Patty immediately. His angry voice filled the room. Tony and Kristen shrank back, but Laura stood her ground defiantly. If eternal love is so important, then Tony and Kristen are deeply in love too. Patty no longer loves Tony. After all, she was the one who filed for divorce. Therefore, it is only natural for two people in love to be together. There is nothing wrong with that.
That is an unbearable justification. Yes, it is joyful when two people in love come together. However, both parties being single is the basic condition. Moreover, there's not only Patty, but also Sarah involved. Disposing of someone because they can't have a son? What era do you think you're living in? If you are living in the present, please update your mindset. This is just unacceptable.
At Mr. Gale's anger, Laura ran out of words to respond. The room fell silent. There was a reason for his anger. In fact, Mr. Gale's wife was infertile and unable to have children. There are still people with outdated mindsets like Tony and Laura, but there are also many who want to have children but can't. Pregnancy and childbirth are sacred, and we mustn't forget that. Mr. Gale could not tolerate his family hurting others for selfish reasons like wanting a son for heir. Tony and Laura were silenced by Mr. Gale, but Kristen's eyes burned with anger. She started to argue back to Mr. Gale directly. You preach as if you're some kind of saint, but you're selfish too. You adopted me because you couldn't have your own kids, right? Whether it was good for me didn't matter. That was just adults making decisions for their own convenience. Kristen clenched her fists and yelled with all her might. I don't know the details, but Mr. Gale is a strict man who apparently didn't spoil Kristen with money or material things. This may be why Kristen feels unloved by her father, as they aren't blood related. Tony and Laura seemed confused as the divorce turmoil had suddenly turned into an argument between Mr. Gale and Kristen. They looked at each other uneasily. Kristen, unable to control her emotions, continued to lash out at Mr. Gale. You just adopted me for Mom's sake, right? Because she wanted a child? Because she was important to you. I was only being used to satisfy someone else. I'm just a tool to you. Everyone thinks they can just use me. Although I haven't known Mr. Gale long, he seems like a genuinely good person. Even as an outsider, I think Kristen is wrong, but Mr. Gale quietly listened to her. What? Aren't you going to say anything? Or do you think what I'm saying isn't even worth responding to?
That's not it. It's not that. I'm actually happy.
Happy? Are you crazy? Or is that some kind of weird hobby?
It's the first time you've spoken honestly to me. You've always been a well-behaved child who didn't need much attention. I used to think you were just a quiet kid, but now I see that's not the case. You must have endured a lot on your own.
His eyes softened as he spoke. Kristen's shoulders trembled slightly.
Yes, I have been strict with you, that's true. I won't make excuses. But it was because I love you. They say the opposite of love is indifference, right? I wouldn't bother saying anything if I didn't care.
Stop it! I can't believe you're saying this now. I've never been loved by my family. Enough, Kristen. You don't understand anything. Even as an outsider, I can see that Mr. Gale cares about you. Yet you just deny it one-sidedly. Right now, you just look like a child throwing a tantrum. I couldn't help but intervene. As a parent myself, I couldn't stand to listen any longer. Being a parent is harder than most can imagine. You can't just quit midway. There's no guarantee of a return for all the effort you pour into your children. Sometimes what you do for their sake can backfire. Even after lovingly raising them, in the end, you have to let go. It's a tough job, isn't it? But the reason parents can keep going is solely the love and responsibility they feel for their children. It's clear that Mr. Gale has more than enough of both. But Kristen seems too stubborn to see the truth right now. Don't lecture me when you were just dumped by your husband. You're just clinging to him because you can't do anything else. Everything has been taken away from you, and you're just going to keep falling into misery. The conversation shifted towards me, and seeing that it was their chance, Tony and Laura regained their momentum.
That's right. I don't know much about Kristen's past, but what's certain is that she'll be happy from now on because she's remarrying me.
Yes, Tony is a wonderful man. He was too good for someone like you. Now he can finally start a life with a woman who matches him. I'm looking forward to it. A child's happiness is a parent's happiness. What they were saying wasn't wrong, but coming from Laura, it sounded insincere. My daughter seemed to think the same, giving her grandmother a cold look. Despite the three showing no signs of remorse, I boldly declared to them, I don't mind. Remarry or do whatever you like, but remember, you'll be the ones regretting it. That's for certain. My husband and his mother swallowed nervously, but still arrogantly took Kristen's hand.
You're complaining, it's so lame. Just keep on talking, loser.
Don't bother contacting us anymore. We four, including Tony and Kristen's baby, will live happily together. Goodbye, Dad. I don't think we'll see each other again. Don't expect to see your grandson. With those final words, the three left the house. After the storm had passed, a silence remained. Mr. Gale was the first to speak.
Patty, Sarah, I'm truly sorry for the rude things my daughter has said.
Please don't apologize. This isn't your fault, Mr. Gale, and it's okay.
What do you mean by it's okay?
Mr. Gale looked puzzled, but I gave him a meaningful smile. There are facts that none of you know yet. They should come to light soon enough. At my words, both Mr. Gale and Sarah could only tilt their heads in confusion. A few days later, I was waiting for a call from my husband at a certain place. It's one of the most luxurious apartments in LA. I quite like the view. It's outstanding. Even if the wait gets long, I doubt I'll get bored. While I was drinking my second cup of coffee, the long-awaited call finally came. I answered with an exceptionally cheerful voice, and then heard my husband's very flustered voice. What's the matter? Calling all of a sudden like this? It's only been a few days since you cut ties with me.
Help me, Patty. Kristen has gone missing.
Oh, really? That sounds serious. But if that's the case, shouldn't you report it to the police? I'm not in the business of finding people, you know.
No, Patty, it's not just that she's gone missing. My ATM cards and credit cards have disappeared too. She had asked me about the pins before, saying we should share important information in case of emergencies. And now my money is being withdrawn like crazy. I don't know what to do.
My husband's words were all over the place, and I just had to laugh. Meanwhile, he continued to rant about something dumb. He seemed utterly clueless and confused. After a good laugh, I finally decided to tell him the truth. You know, Kristen has another man, not just you. She actually has a real boyfriend.
What are you talking about all of a sudden? I'm already so upset. Don't confuse me more.
It's true, and if you want to know, the baby in Kristen's belly isn't yours either.
That's a lie. It has to be. You just have a bad personality, giving me wrong information and looking down, laughing at me like that. You're the worst. I've lost all respect for you.
My husband was so upset he started crying. So I guess Tony and Kristen's romance didn't last long. Is his mother worried? Of course, for me, everything's going according to plan. I'll show you proof that what I'm saying is true. Here's a question for you. Where am I right now?
How should I know? Just go to hell.
Wow, that hurt. But the one who's really going to hell isn't me, it's you. Anyway, the correct answer is right here. I switched to a video call to show my surroundings. Immediately, I could hear my husband scream from the smartphone.
Kristen, why are you with Patty? You two were conspiring against me?
Kristen remained silent, looking down. That's understandable. After all, I now have leverage of her. Tony's not just Kristen here. Let me introduce you to Alex, Kristen's real boyfriend. As I introduced him, Alex appeared on the screen. Yes, I had already made contact with Kristen's actual boyfriend. We had just stormed into Kristen's house together. A louder scream came from the other end.
You bastard. How dare you seduce my Kristen? You have my ATM cards and credit cards, don't you? Give them back now, along with the money you stole. I must say, I didn't know anything about this. Not about your existence, nor the ATM cards or credit cards. I like an explanation about this situation too. Kristen?
Alex glared sharply at Kristen as she kept on looking down.
Kristen? What is going on? Who is this man? Your real boyfriend? That's a lie, right? We loved each other so much. Tell me the truth.
Shut up!
What? I can't hear you.
I said shut up! You delusional jerk! What do you mean we loved each other? I never loved you, not even once. It was all in your head. I was only with you for the money, and you easily cheated on me when you had a wife, you jerk.
My husband was so shocked he could hardly close his mouth. After a long silence, he suddenly slumped over the table and started crying. He continued to cry out like a child, unable to have a proper conversation. Meanwhile, Alex was grilling Kristen, and she fired back in a hostile way, making things worse. I felt the urge to go home and relax over coffee with Sarah, but I couldn't just abandon the job halfway. Since there was no more need for me to say, I quietly left my seat and moved to the hallway. All that was left was to patiently wait for my husband to recover. After he had cried enough, Tony finally raised his swollen face. Just when I thought we could wrap things up, he made a surprising suggestion.
Let's start over, Patty. We can still go back to how we were.
What? What are you talking about?
Taking care of Sarah alone must be financially difficult for you, right? Besides, isn't it better for the family to be together? Mom will surely understand.
How conveniently he speaks of family now. A word that should be warm and loving has turned vile because of him. I laughed at him with all the scorn I could muster. No, I'll pass. Do you have any idea how much you've made me suffer? And it's not just about me. What angers me most is that you hurt Sarah. I never thought you would neglect your own daughter after an affair.
I just really wanted a son. There was no other intention, and it's not too late. If we love each other again, a son will come soon.
Please stop saying such disgusting things. There's not an ounce of love left for you and me. I can't even stand to breathe the same air as you, let alone touch you. And you keep talking about a son. But isn't that completely unnecessary now?
What do you mean?
Your misconduct is already well known among our company and business partners. It's being viewed as a problem everywhere, so it's only a matter of time before our existing deals are canceled. Soon you'll struggle with cash flow and the business will become unmanageable. If the company falls apart, what's the use of an heir?
That's...
After that, my husband was silent and seemed stunned. I finished with all the sarcasm I could muster. The only family you have left is your mother. Make sure to get along with her. I pressed the end call button and left Kristen's house. That was the last time I saw my husband. The clear blue sky seemed even more beautiful today. After that, my husband was shunned by everyone from his company and business partners. As expected, the company faced financial difficulties and quickly decided to fold. Tony and Laura's once strong bond took a hit when they started struggling with money, and now they're stuck in a cycle of arguing. The industry spread rumors about my husband, and he has no prospects for re-employment. Laura has never worked a part-time job, so she can hardly start working now, and does nothing but complain at home. My husband manages to get by on day labor, but his standard of living continues to decline. Both he and his relationship with his mother got worse, and it seems they will lead a difficult life forever. For those who saw their child as a mere tool, this was a fitting end. Meanwhile, Kristen did give birth safely, but eventually broke up with Alex, her real boyfriend. Perhaps Alex was a decent man. If suddenly you find out your girlfriend was cheating and stole from another, it's normal to want to avoid getting involved in that mess. While he's someone I don't really know, I do hope he finds happiness. After breaking up with Alex, Kristen, who has never worked properly, has no choice but to rely on her father, Robert. But being a strict man, both to himself and others, Robert did not coddle her, but rather pushed her away. Of course, this isn't to say he abandoned her. Robert loves Kristen, which is why he wants her to acknowledge her mistakes, reflect, and live an honest life. I am indebted to Robert as well. I can only hope that some of his wishes reach her. As for me, I now live peacefully with my daughter. While we aren't rich, living without fear of living with toxic family members is truly comfortable. I want to give my daughter all the attention she missed out on. Years later, I was lucky enough to get remarried with my current husband and was blessed with a son. Looking at our son, I am reminded that there are people who can't have kids despite their desires, and that pregnancy and childbirth are sacred things. These are things I must never forget. Going forward, I would cherish the miracle of my children's birth and vow to find happiness with my new family.
Oh? Is that you, Mandy? The moment I heard that voice, memories of my hellish married life surged back. And I turned around with goosebumps. Standing there was my smirking ex-husband, with a young woman clinging to his arm. The very person who made my first marriage a living hell is now standing right in front of me. Who would have thought we'd meet here? It's been a while, hasn't it? Huh? The ex-wife? Nice to meet you. The young woman next to him greeted me in a high-pitched voice. My ex-husband had his arm around her. You see, this is my current wife. Young and cute, huh? You are nothing compared to her. As I tried to leave, he stopped me and looked me over. Look at you, an old, unemployed, and poor single woman. You're living a miserable life because you couldn't serve me properly. Serves you right. Hey, that's a bit much. But it's true though. I was seething inside. I had to say something. Turning back to them, I asked quietly. Hey, who exactly are you talking about? My name is Mandy Thompson. I've been married to Ben for 2 years. In fact, I was married once before I met my current husband. That marriage was so tragic that I don't even want to remember it. The man I first married was named Steve Owen. We met at a small company where I started working as a fresh graduate. Steve, who was in charge of training me, seemed manly and dependable. Having had little experience in love, I was thrilled when he asked me out. And I quickly agreed to date him. However, Steve had always been somewhat tyrannical. He would get moody when I talked to other male employees. or would behave arrogantly towards restaurant staff. But love was blind. After 2 years of dating, he proposed, and I agreed to marry him. Steve strongly wished that I become a housewife, so I did just that upon our marriage. Once married, I realized that his manly character was just domineering. Now that you're a housewife, do the household chores perfectly. That's your job. He never helped with the housework. No matter how hard I tried, he never appreciated my efforts. Instead, he was always nitpicking how I managed the household chores and finances. Still, I kept doing my best, grateful to be allowed to stay home. 3 months into our marriage, during winter, I came down with a severe cold. Feeling ill since morning, I checked my temperature, over 100 degrees. Chills and dizziness made it impossible to do any housework. When Steve returned from work and saw me wrapped in a blanket, he visibly grimaced. "Hi, Mandy. What are you doing lying down?" "Steve. I think I caught a cold. My temperature is over 100 degrees. Despite my explanation, he frantically looked around the house and scowled. "Hey. You haven't done the cleaning or the laundry. I've been feeling ill since the morning, I really couldn't do it. Don't spout such lazy excuses, you're just a housewife." He shouted and then yanked away my blanket. "You haven't even prepared my dinner. Make it now." "But I told you, I have a high fever. I can't possibly cook." Tears filled my eyes as I pleaded. But Steve didn't care and forced me to get up, then shoved a $10 bill at me. "Then, go buy something with this now." "What?" "Don't buy anything for yourself. You skip dinner as a punishment for slacking off. Just buy mine, now." Steve dragged me to the entrance while I was staggering and then threw me out of the house. In the freezing cold, in my pajamas outside. It seemed I wouldn't be let back in until I brought something back. After managing to buy groceries, I collapsed right at the entrance upon returning. Steve glanced at me briefly, snatched the ready-made food by his side, and began eating silently while watching TV. As I lay collapsed in the cold entrance, I heard Steve's laughter from afar, and a tear rolled down my cheek. Yet, I hadn't considered divorce because I didn't want to betray my father, who had been delighted by my marriage. My mother passed away from illness when I was in middle school, and since then, it had always been just my father and me. My father was running a stationery shop and we weren't wealthy. But I had a happy life with my kind father who loved me deeply. When I got married, he said with tears, "Now I can finally rest easy. Be happy." If I divorced within just 6 months of marriage, it would betray my kind father. I thought I just needed to endure it for myself. Steve's domineering behavior continued. I managed to endure it, exhausting myself through the days of our marriage. About a year into our marriage, bad news arrived. My father was hospitalized with advanced cancer. Dad. I had no idea things had gotten this bad. My father had lost a lot of weight during the short time I hadn't seen him.
Yeah.
I realized too late. They say there's nothing they can do now. As he spoke quietly, I cried. My father gently wiped away my tears and asked, "Mandy, are you happy in your marriage?" I lied instinctively. I didn't want to make him worried about me on his sickbed.
Yeah.
"I'm happy. Steve has been very good to me." "Is that so?" "Well, that's good then." Looking back, maybe my father sensed something then. However, he said nothing more. With the added need to care for my father, life became even harder. Until then, I had spent all my time during the day managing the detailed housework that Steve demanded. But with the nursing of my father, that became difficult. Amidst this life, I asked Steve. Steve, I have a favor to ask. Could you please visit my father in the hospital? Huh? Why should I? Steve grimaced as he looked at me. Well, you are his son-in-law after all. I'm sure my father would be happy to see your face. What are you talking about? I don't want to see the face of a dying old man. I stared at Steve in disbelief as he continued, oblivious to my shock. More importantly, don't slack on the housework because you're nursing the old man. Think well about what to prioritize. With that, he left grumpily for the bathroom. Later, as my father's condition worsened and I spent more time in the hospital, Steve, far from supporting me, berated me daily for not doing the housework. On the day of my father's surgery, when I told him I would be away all day, Steve exploded. Hey, don't mess around. What do you think a wife's job is? But it's my father's surgery day. So? What about my meal? The cleaning? The laundry? Can't you manage for one day? As I mustered the courage to say this, Steve sighed dramatically and pulled something out of his bag. It was a signed divorce form. A divorce form. Yes, that's right. I'm supporting you, but if you can't even manage the housework, it's a divorce. But, it's about my father. I'm the only family he has. I don't care. If you're saying you won't do the housework because you're accompanying him to surgery, then it's an immediate divorce. Just think well. Steve left these words behind and went off to work. I was stunned, staring at the divorce form on the table. But I had no choice but to accompany my father to surgery. After the surgery, as my father woke up, I was crying by his bedside. Dad, are you awake? As I hurriedly wiped my tears, my father spoke quietly to me. You're really struggling with your married life, aren't you? It's okay, I kind of knew. Dad. I'm sorry. I might get a divorce. Even though you were so happy about my marriage, I'm really sorry. I sobbed like a little child and told him everything. My father listened, nodding, and then he said, Mandy. There's something I've never told you before. Actually. I was stunned by the shocking content of his words. When I returned home, Steve was waiting, looking furious. Hey. You skipped housework to go to the hospital, didn't you? Yes. Then it's a divorce. Hurry up and sign the divorce form. Steve forced me to sit at the dining table and to write the divorce form. I quietly asked him, Are you really going to abandon me? Me, who is stressed out from taking care of my father. Yes, that's right. I don't care if the old man dies and you're left all alone. I'll gladly get rid of a defective wife like you. I silently signed the divorce form and left the house on that day. As I stood at the entrance with my belongings, Steve said dismissively, Goodbye. Never show your face here again, damn wife. Soon after, I returned to my family home to continue caring for my father. However, 3 months later, my father passed away. After the funeral, when things had settled down a bit, a lawyer came to visit me. I've come regarding your father's estate. I remembered what my father had said on the day of the surgery. Mandy. I've been hiding this. But I've been trading stocks and cryptocurrencies for about 10 years. What? Dad, why are you bringing this up now? With that, there's a substantial amount of money. When I pass away, it will all be yours. So don't worry about living after the divorce. Go ahead and leave him and live your life. Dad. All I want is for you to be happy. Please, don't make the wrong choice. Knowing this allowed me to decide to get a divorce. However, when I heard the amount of the inheritance from the lawyer, I was floored. Excluding taxes, I would have $3 million left. There were also several properties. My father, who had run a small stationery shop, had a talent for making money. I followed the lawyer's instructions and gratefully accepted the inheritance from my father. Later, when I had trouble with property management, I met my current husband, Ben. Born into a family of landlords, he easily solved my problems. Later, Ben proposed a relationship with marriage in mind, and I decided to remarry. Attracted by his competence and kind nature, I now have a happy life. I hope to continue living a peaceful life with the person I love. But just when I thought that, I ended up having a nightmare reunion at a real estate office I was visiting for business. I encountered my ex-husband, Steve. Oh? Is that you, Mandy? The moment I heard that voice, memories of my hellish married life surged back. And I turned around with goosebumps. Standing there was my smirking ex-husband, Steve, with a young woman clinging to his arm. Who would have thought we'd meet here? It's been a while, hasn't it? Huh? Steve's ex-wife? Nice to meet you. The young woman next to him greeted me in a high-pitched voice. My ex-husband had his arm around her. You see, this is my current wife, Kelly. Young and cute, huh? You are nothing compared to her. Faced with such an introduction by Steve, I informed him emotionlessly. I have some errands to run, so I will be leaving soon. Hey, is that your attitude after running into your ex-husband by chance? Can't you at least make small talk? As I remained silent, Steve looked me over from head to toe. You're all dressed up, but what are you doing at a real estate agency? You must be looking for some rundown apartment to live in alone, huh? That's none of your business. Then Kelly noticed the bag I was carrying. Huh? This person is carrying a super expensive bag? Steve, didn't you say your ex-wife is unemployed? Silly Kelly, it must be a fake. It's just a poor person's pretense. Is that so? Oh my, how shameful. Kelly laughed joyfully, and Steve smiled at her. Seeing in disgust their faces, he turned back to me and said disdainfully. What? Are you jealous? A poor, unemployed single woman at your age. You're living a miserable life because you couldn't serve me properly. Serves you right. Hey, Steve, that's too much. But well, it's true. I was furious inside. I had to say something. Turning back to them, I asked quietly. Hey, you, who exactly are you talking about? Huh? Just then, an executive from the real estate company approached me. Ms. Thompson, I apologize for the wait. I understand you wanted to discuss the matter regarding the condo you own. I responded politely to the executive. Yes, thank you for your assistance. But before we talk, may I have a moment? I ran into an acquaintance. Of course. I'll be waiting. Steve and Kelly watched the exchange between the executive and me with dumbfounded expressions. What? Owns a condo? He finally broke his silence, and I replied to him with a sigh. Yes. I currently own several properties. And I'm here today to discuss some contracts. Huh? Real estate? You? As he struggled to grasp the situation, I enlightened him. The father you ridiculed had made millions in stocks. And owned several properties. I inherited all of that. What? You kept the inheritance a secret from me. You were the one who ridiculed and abandoned my father and me, right? Steve stammered and his face changed colors rapidly. Eventually, he began to beg. Mandy. I'm sorry about that time. I'll break up with her, so please marry me again. Huh? Wait a minute, Steve. Kelly looked at him with a shocked expression. As I looked down at him expressionlessly, Steve pleaded. Actually, my company is going under, and I'm in trouble with money. What? I didn't know about that. Shut up. You be quiet. Mandy, please, we were once married, right? Just as Steve was reaching out towards me, a stern voice rang out. Please do not touch my wife. What is this about? Who are you? There stood Ben, my current husband, who had arrived a bit late. He put his arm around my shoulder and glared at Steve. Tall and dressed in a well-tailored suit, Ben exuded an aura of wealth. Steve shrank back and muttered. Wife. Mandy, you remarried? Yes, I've been remarried for a while. To a man with better financial stability and character than you. No way, how can that be? Steve looked momentarily devastated, but then he started to say something outrageous. Then, Mandy, lend me some money. No, give me some. Just $10,000 would be fine, you're rich, right? To him, I shouted back. After the way you treated me, who would give you money? Don't ever show me that pathetic face again. Get out of here with that woman right now. Startled by my shouting, Steve realized he couldn't get any money from me. He then reached out to Kelly and spoke softly. Kelly, shall we go? Don't touch me. Kelly lashed out at the crestfallen Steve. I can't believe you kept quiet about your company going under. You were just after my father's money, weren't you? No, it's not like that. Believe me, I love you, Kelly. You just said you'd divorce me. Stop making a fool of me. Fine, I'll divorce you myself. Be prepared for that. I'll contact you through a lawyer. Kelly stormed off immediately after dropping those words. Apparently, she was from a well-off family. Left behind, Steve stood in stunned silence. At that moment, I couldn't resist whispering in his ear. Unemployed, poor, single man, serves you right. As Steve crumbled to his knees, Ben and I left the scene. I heard through the grapevine that Steve and Kelly did indeed divorce. Kelly's family owned a construction company. And her enraged parents threw Steve out penniless, who had been almost like a son-in-law. Later, Steve somehow managed to move into a rundown apartment. And now he spends his days laboring, alone and tirelessly. I will never forgive him. Even now, I don't feel the slightest bit of sympathy for him. Meanwhile, Ben and I continue to live a peaceful life. My father, who saved me from a desperate situation, and Ben, who taught me what true happiness is. I am forever grateful to them. Recently, I found out I'm pregnant. Ben is looking forward to the arrival of our child. I want to continue walking this happy path with my new family.
My name is Katie. Last Christmas, I accidentally accumulated about 6 pounds of fat from eating luxurious Christmas dishes. So this year, I am dieting in preparation for Christmas. If I lose 6 pounds now, I'll be okay even if I gain 6 pounds during Christmas. Huh? That's not how it works? No way. From Christmas to New Year's, there's just too much delicious food. Soon, I'll even buy some Valentine's chocolate for myself. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm going to get fat this year too, sigh. So, today is about a winter memory of mine. I'd love for you to hear it. It was when I was 25 years old. I had been dating my boyfriend, Edward, for several years, and our marriage had been decided. I introduced Edward to my parents, a so-called marriage introduction. My parents liked Edward, and the marriage would have gone smoothly. But a problem occurred. As soon as my older sister, Cindy, returned from work, she was smitten with Edward. It's strange, but as sisters, I could understand her feelings and thoughts. Cindy had fallen in love with Edward at first sight. I hoped it was just my imagination. But Cindy had blushed and held his hand when Edward reached out to shake hands. She always looked up at him when talking. I think it's inappropriate for a sister's boyfriend, but she probably did it unconsciously. You can't stop people's feelings, and I assumed Cindy wouldn't get serious and would stop herself at some point. However, after Edward left, Cindy caught me fresh out of the bath and in just a towel and said, "You should call off the wedding." When I asked why, she said things like, "That man is a player and you can find someone better." However, there was no basis for these claims. "Why do you think he's a player?" I asked. Cindy replied, "It's a woman's intuition." Cindy had never had a boyfriend before. How could I believe the intuition of someone with no experience in relationships? Instead, I trust the character of Edward, whom I have observed for years. Naturally, I took my sister's advice lightly and didn't really pay much attention to it. Edward started visiting my parents' house more often since he said he wanted to get along with my family. My parents were happy, and I certainly didn't mind my future husband getting along with my parents. A good relationship was being built. But Cindy was trying to build a different kind of good relationship with Edward. According to Edward, when I wasn't around, Cindy grabbed his arm, pressed her chest against him, and asked, "Don't you think Katie is childish?" She even asked for his contact information and pretended to fall and expose her skirt. Edward found it so contrived that it was funny. If he had taken it seriously, I would have been really worried. But Cindy, thinking that Edward wouldn't reject her strongly because she was my sister, kept pressing him with a sweet voice whenever they met. Originally, it was love at first sight. But the fact that Edward worked for a fairly large company also hit Cindy's heart hard. He's a man with good prospects and my type, she locked on and wouldn't let go. My parents saw Cindy's shameful behavior but said nothing. Or rather, they have never said anything to Cindy, it wasn't new. Honestly, Cindy has always been the type who can't do anything. If you ask her to reheat side dishes, she somehow manages to melt non-heat resistant plastic plates in the microwave. And, as always, she was bad at studying. She was bad at sports, especially swimming lessons, which she always tried to skip by using any means possible, hurting her leg, feeling unwell, or getting a rash. She couldn't do studies, sports, or housework. Honestly, she wasn't even particularly good-looking. But our parents, simply because she was the eldest daughter, doted on Cindy and ordered me to support her behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, because I shouldn't stand out, I was supposed to highlight my sister. It's a harsh story for siblings. Well, for our parents. The helpless poor child was probably a factor that made Cindy endearing. Weirdly, I was capable of anything, the type that could learn anything quickly. Adults might have found it unappealing because I was too teachable. So I even effortlessly managed the mission of highlighting my sister. And there was a time when I pretended to be incapable outside the home. After I outgrew my teenage years, I thought, if I keep this up, I'll fail my exams, and began to rebel against my parents and do as I pleased. If I had continued listening to them, I might have really become incapable. This rebellion made Cindy start to dislike me a bit for no longer supporting her. But we were never on bad terms. We talked normally, and I even advised her occasionally. The extreme doting on Cindy and her hostility toward me. There were some twisted aspects, but it was still a normal family. However, because Edward never showed interest in Cindy, this balance was disrupted. I can't approve of my younger sister getting married first. The night before the wedding, Cindy told our parents, "No, it's okay, Cindy will get married soon too." That's right, Cindy. It's not about that. Normally, the elder sister marries before the younger one does. She's too young for marriage. But the wedding is tomorrow. What, Mom, you're not on my side? Am I going to be the pitiful elder sister who gets married off after her younger sister? That's not. I quietly listened to my sister's meltdown in the living room from the hallway. Should I wait for my inexperienced sister to get married? I'd get old in no time. Really, what is she talking about? Well, she'll calm down once she vents, I assumed. All right. Dad and Mom will skip the wedding tomorrow, so please forgive us. Right, Cindy? What? I couldn't believe my ears. Mom also agreed with Dad, begging Cindy for forgiveness. What is this? Followers of my sister? It was almost like worship. This was beyond mere doting. But Cindy sighed and reluctantly agreed, fine, I'll put up with that. At least make it a wedding not recognized by the family. She really didn't want me and Edward to get married. Probably because she was in love with him. Unbelievable. Because of Cindy's unrequited love, my parents decided not to attend the wedding. On the day of the wedding, which was supposed to be a sunny day, I couldn't sleep well and was completely sleep deprived. It wasn't because I was too excited about the wedding. I spent the whole night feeling sick, remembering the conversation between my sister and parents. When my parents officially informed me of their decision to skip the wedding, I'll never forget the smirking look on my sister's face. At the venue, I had to tell Edward and his parents about my parents' absence. I'm sorry. My sister opposed this marriage, so my family will be absent, I said. There couldn't be a more miserable report. Parents not attending their daughter's wedding, even his parents couldn't believe it. Edward's parents were silent for a while after hearing my report. On what was supposed to be a festive day, such a heavy atmosphere. It was the worst. At that moment, my mother-in-law took my hand. And soon after, my father-in-law placed his hand on top of ours. You have a family right here, don't you? Forget about it? Please don't make today a sad day. Look, smile. With my mother-in-law's gentle smile and the warmth of my father-in-law's hand, I burst into tears. Hey, Katie. I'm your husband. Don't say things like my family is absent, it makes me sad. Edward gently stroked my head. Tears streamed down my face as my in-laws. And Edward frantically but laughingly tried to calm me down. Bride. Don't cry, don't cry. Look, your makeup. In the midst of all this, my mother-in-law looked me straight in the face and said, Katie, it might be hard to leave your family behind. But this will surely be a new beginning. Now, go build your own family. Feeling abandoned by my biological parents, my mother-in-law held me tight. Edward and my father-in-law followed suit. It'll be all right. Just as my mother-in-law said, this will be a new beginning. I vowed to build a happy family of my own, and so, I married Edward without a hitch. 15 years later, a daughter and 2 sons were born between my husband and me. My daughter, capable and able to do anything, naturally took care of her two rowdy brothers who were always wreaking havoc at home. Still, her way of scolding them, "Enough already," sounded just like me. Oh dear, what a handful. Edward's job was going smoothly, and we had bought a single-family home. Enjoying peaceful days, until troublemakers showed up, none other than my father, mother, and sister. We had been estranged since the wedding, and I hadn't given them our new address. However, somehow, the three of them showed up at our house. Naturally, the first words upon seeing their faces weren't warm greetings like, "Long time no see, but what are you doing here?" "There's something we need from Katie," said my sister. Even my parents begged me, saying, "You're the only one we can ask." What could it be? What could they possibly need from someone they haven't seen in 15 years? As I stood silent, mixed feelings of wanting and not wanting to hear more, my mother broke the silence. "Give Cindy your husband." What? Even Edward, who had come to the door to check what was happening, stood dumbfounded just like me. Wait. I don't follow. Why would you say I should give Edward to Cindy? I asked sharply, and both my parents looked embarrassed, while only my sister seemed arrogantly assured. Cindy is still single. She's turning 42 this year. And what of it? I was even more puzzled by my father's words. Edward felt the same way. The truth is, Cindy's company went bankrupt recently, and she's now unemployed. Oh, that's unfortunate. Being single and jobless, you can understand we're worried about Cindy's future. Your sisters, after all, you should feel the same. Looking into my parents' eyes staring intently at me, I thought to myself, no, not really. But kept quiet, more curious about what they would say next, despite finding the conversation tedious. I just wanted them to get to the point without interrupting. It turns out, Cindy has always loved Edward, and she's still alone. You've enjoyed your married life with Edward, right? Please, let Cindy have the rest of her life with him. What the? While I was stunned, Edward looked at me, unable to keep up with the sudden turn of events, as if his soul had left his body. Ignoring us, my parents begged, and my sister still sat there smugly, as if certain that Edward would be hers. Well, our parents always gave her anything she wanted. Maybe that's why she's so mistaken, but this is just awful. As I held my head in shock, Edward pulled me aside. It seemed his soul had returned. Hey, isn't this a chance? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, because it's like that joke you made while drunk has come to life. Should we do it? We quickly separated and faced my sister and parents again. So, Cindy, you really love Edward that much? To my question, my sister, surprised, said, Yes, yes. I've always loved him, really, really loved him. I see. That's some strong feeling. You've loved someone else's husband for 15 years, right? Yes, it's been tough, thinking of you and Edward together. We were getting along so well. Despite her confidently smug expression, Edward and I managed to keep straight faces. We lost then. If you feel that strongly, I'll step aside. The words shocked our parents. Immediately, my mother exclaimed, Really? But you loved Edward too, didn't you? Well, actually, Edward has also. I've always loved Cindy. Following my lead, Edward responded without missing a beat, causing my sister's face to turn bright red. See? I knew it. You didn't mind when I linked arms with you. The way you looked at me, it was so affectionate. It's been a long wait, we're finally going to be together. I struggled to keep from laughing. Hey, Edward, you're looking down. Pretending to tear up, but I can see your shoulders shaking. Hang in there. Let's spend our lives together, Ned. Cindy, who had been calling him by his name until just now, suddenly started calling him by a nickname. Over these 15 years, she must have built up quite an intense imaginary relationship with Edward in her mind. I'm happy, Cindy. Support me from now on, Edward smiled too. Yes. Of course. Then I'm quitting my job. What? Her blush vanished in an instant, her eyes wide with shock. I want to be with you every second, without wasting a moment. So I'm quitting my job to always be by your side. What? I won't even go outside. If possible, follow me to the bathroom. I'll always be watching you while you do the housework. As Edward cheerfully spoke, my sister froze, then began to panic. My parents were also flustered. I'm not working either, so that would be troubling. Why? If we're together, what's there to fear? Even without money, we'd be happy, right? No, but there are insurance premiums and stuff in modern America. This isn't some old tale. You mean you can't love me without money? It's not like that. Her eyes clearly avoided mine. I quickly chimed in. Well, Edward, make sure you pay a generous alimony when we divorce, okay? Edward smiled. Don't worry, your sister and your parents will take care of it. This caused my parents to pale and exchange glances. Cindy, I think it's not right to take a husband from your sister after all. That's right, Cindy. That's going a bit too far. Their sudden change of heart was as dramatically swift as it was beautiful. What? You guys said you would definitely get Edward for me. No, but Cindy, that's a different matter. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Whose side are you on? My sister was in a frenzy, yanking at our mother's hair as she tried to calm her, while our father desperately tried to intervene. It was like a scene from hell. And Edward and I just watched for a while. Finally, Edward, trying to change the course of the conversation, said, excuse me. Everyone suddenly turned to look at him. Honestly, I'm not at all into your sister. I was being polite because she's Katie's sister, but honestly, I can't stand women who make passes like that. It's just a turn-off. Yeah, exactly. It's a total turn-off. And the assumption that I like her is just too much. I really can't deal with women who jump to conclusions like that. Edward's frankness left my sister and our parents speechless. Huh? So what was all that before, Ned? Could you not call my husband by his nickname? There's no way Edward could love you, Cindy. We have children and we're happy together. I intervened as my sister approached Edward with a pale face. What the heck, Cindy? You tricked us. How can you not realize you were being tricked? Why would a man you haven't heard from in 15 years suddenly be in love with you? Are you delusional? My sister's face turned red with tears, probably from frustration. If you were such a charming woman, it might be one thing. But no one wants a delusional woman who's unemployed and leeching off her parents. Plus, you've always had your mom do the household chores. So you probably can't even handle those, right? With those skills at over 40, even if you got married, you'd likely be dumped. Edward laughed in the background, seemingly hitting the mark. As my sister couldn't stop her tears, sobbing uncontrollably. My parents comforted her but looked troubled as if to say, she's got a point. Well, that's how it is. Edward isn't going anywhere. That's right, so please give up, big sister. My sister broke down completely, crying childishly. It's embarrassing for an adult, she really hasn't grown up at all. Learn from this and don't get involved with us ever again. We're cutting ties with you for good. If Cindy struggles because she's unemployed, don't expect any help from us. With that, I closed the front door. When the kids asked what was happening, I said, it's almost Halloween and it seems a bad demon showed up at the wrong time. My eldest son suggested seeing her, which I stopped. But from outside, we could still hear my sister's wails. 5 years later, Cindy is still single as expected. She managed to find a job. But due to her reckless behavior, hitting on young coworkers and married men, she was eventually fired. Desperate for marriage, she continued her antics and is now banned from matchmaking parties. It looks like she'll remain single for life. My parents, even after retirement, work multiple jobs to save money, likely realizing they can't depend on Cindy for their future care. After all the doting they did, they should work hard and realize it's because of their sister. Meanwhile, I live a relaxed life as a housewife, thanks to my capable children and husband's earnings. No need for a job, though sometimes I wonder if working would have balanced out my overeating during Christmas. As my daughter, who is perfectly slim, declares she wants to diet, I try desperately to stop her. Wait until you've grown sideways like your mom. My 2 sons have taken up dancing, recently performed at a local event, and dream of joining a famous dance group. Please keep the group going until my sons grow up, I think to myself. My in-laws frequently visit, and we often share meals. I call them in-laws here. But honestly, I think of them as my real parents. We're planning a luxurious resort vacation during the Easter holidays. I hope they stay healthy and continue to share their lives with us. Though things were rough before marriage, it's been nothing but happiness since. I truly feel I've found my real family.